Hello everyone, my name is Terry Nagasha Katrina, and today we are going to talk about drug, alcohol and substance abuse. I have my fellow young people around and our two counselors.
And Priscilla Navatans Chirana, I work with Reproductive Health Uganda. I am a counselor and I'm a young people's advocate.
I'm Mirembe Shubi.
And I'm Henry Semakula. I work with the Ministry of Education and Sports. I am a professional counselor, a professional teacher, a professional gender activist, and I have a lot of experience working in HIV. I'm glad to be part of this discussion on alcohol, drugs, and substance abuse.
I'm Kauma Paul.
I'm Nabosa Denise.
I'm Sunday here.
So if I take the card.
Hey, by the way, you guys, did you hear about Joe? I heard he was in rehab, and do you know that they found him a few days back? And apparently he was, drug abuse.
Abusing
You
drugs?
guys, what is rehab?
Rehabilitation, don't you know? As in, it's a place where they take people with who take drugs and, abuse drugs and facing depression, those things.
What do you mean by drugs?
Drugs like weed, cocaine,
Diagram, even aviation fuel.
Yeah, by the way, I heard about cow dung used in the western parts and the grey hair.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm very serious about that.
And many times young people think it's a joke, but indeed dung has been found to be one of the materials used to manufacture drugs, as well as grey hair. And I want to caution my fellow old people out there, just seriously safeguard your grey hair, because these young people may still need to use it as a material for making drugs.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Semakula. And looking at all those drugs, someone out there might be wondering what we actually mean by abusing drugs. We look at that as excessive use or consumption or taking of different drugs, as some of them have been mentioned. Things like weed, alcohol, Viagra, the cow dung that some people sniff, the aviation fuel. If you tend to use any of those things, that means you are abusing drugs. And at the end of the day, that is going to be harmful to your body as a young person, because it's going to make you do things that you're not supposed to do.
So how do you know someone is using drugs?
In fact, they told me that he was being very aggressive. He got into a fight the other day.
Who was that then?
His name was
Oh,
Joe.
the friend called Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he used to be so friendly, but then he started getting withdrawn and isolated.
You guys, do you remember that Joe used to dislike the guys who urinate like on the roadside? Last week I found him by the roadside, seriously urinating. So I was asking myself what really happened.
Actually, me, last time I went to their place, and the place was very dirty. He couldn't even go for shower. I think that is the reason why.
And just to catch it up from what Tira is telling us, indeed, taking of drugs has very, very serious consequences. He mentions poor hygiene at the place where Joe was staying, is that right? Yeah. But again, the poor hygiene may not only be in the home, but also on the individual. I'm suspecting that friend of yours must have even stopped cleaning up, washing his body, washing his clothes, and possibly he himself had to develop a kind of smell that was not friendly to everybody. So it is true, when you take these drugs, you are risking into a very dangerous area. The counselor earlier told us that these drugs actually have different categories, and of course, depending on the type of drug you are taking, the effect is also likely to match with the drug. There are drugs, for example, that she mentioned as being called the hallucinators or hallucinations. The effect on you is that you even begin seeing things that are not there. You hear people chasing you, you hear people making an alarm against you, you take off and run as if a vehicle is chasing you, and so on and so forth.
And then we also have the depressant drugs, where we see people using alcohol thinking that it is going to sort out some of the problems they have. And also the other one would be the ones that stimulate people to do things they also do not wish to do. Things like cocaine can stimulate someone. They make them feel that they have the energy, or they have all the energy in the world to actually fight off everyone. And as young people, it is very, very important that we don't engage into abusing drugs.
And Councillor Priscilla, we often have young people who may want to, for example, go out and sing, or go out and dance, or go
even
out
on
and
parties,
even
we've
on
seen
parties.
people take alcohol because they think it's going to give them the boldness to actually move out and dance.
So I was actually looking for the word boldness. So some of them want to engage in those activities, but they are shy. And so there's that big assumption that when you actually go and sip a bit of booze, a bit of cocaine, you are up there and the shyness has gone. You see some of our celebrity singers here, before they get on stage, they have to really put on something that will make them forget that they are seeing a big audience. And so that one enables them to quickly perform.
The last bit before we dive into something else is examples of heroin that is also abused, and at the end of the day, we have seen some people use it as painkillers. Someone has pain somewhere and they think if they take this particular drug, it's actually going to take away all the pain they have, which is actually not true.
But just to add a little on Councillor Priscilla's observation, yes, there are some drugs that are medically prescribed to kill pain. But if it is medically prescribed, like part of cocaine could be medically prescribed.
Yes.
Maybe when you use in the prescribed amounts, then you are not abusing. But when you begin using for the sake of, without medical prescription, that is where the abuse now starts.
But
Yeah.
I'm really confused because I've known Joe for a very, very long time. I don't know what could have caused him to take part in, you know, such substances. Like, he didn't seem like the kind of person to do ecstasy. I'm not getting it. Like, why? What caused it?
I think we can now hear from colleagues here. We can hear from Paul what he thinks could be the cause of.
I think actually I've ever had that, the parental neglect. Like I think Joe, remember last time Joe was telling us that he never knew what time the parents used to leave and what time they used to come in. I think that could be one of the causes, because I don't think they even got time for like to hear his side.
So Joe's parents were never at home.
Yes.
He never got time to talk
He
to
doesn't know the
him.
time when they are in and when they are out. Like he never sees them. He sees them
And
like
so
once a
they also never got time to understand his habits and to possibly caution him.
We see
and warn
some
him.
parental neglect or family neglect of Joe around here as one of the key causes, and that is very important for us to note as parents and young people out there.
Given too much freedom. His parents used to give him too much freedom. He was like everywhere.
And I think that is
Everywhere.
also very common for parents today. They think the people they leave at home, the aunties and the maids, will take care of the children. At the same time, they want them to do the house chores. And then they assume that everything is taken care of, which is actually not true. So we need to have some time with our children, and we do not have to give them a lot of freedom. Do what you want. Go party, whatever time you come back is comfortable with me, so long as you come back.
And indeed what you are saying is very right. As long as, yes, it is true that the parents must provide some reasonable freedom,
Yeah.
because freedom is a human right and it is a child right. But when the freedom is too much,
Uncontrolled.
uncontrolled, so this child easily goes out to the bars, he goes out for night dances, he goes out for sleepovers, he goes out for any program. You just never know what happens next.
I also heard these days you can easily access the drugs. Like I once heard Joe and his friends talking about it. They could easily get them.
I think we've also seen that in our different communities, almost within the neighborhood, there is a shop that sells alcohol, different types of alcohol and some of these drugs. And maybe if you also move around, take an example of the supermarkets, the malls, beer and other drugs are sold all over. So I think young people are very much exposed
And what is
to-
even more
to these
disturbing,
drugs, and they
Priscilla,
can easily get
and
them.
our young people, is that despite the availability of these different drugs and alcohols, they are also in different packages that seem to be affordable to many of the young people.
and enticing.
You find a sachet of 200, a sachet of 500, a small bottle of 1,000. These are things that young people can also.
I think
Afford.
also it is also bad peer pressure, because days before I saw him, he had started engaging in those such bad groups, those defense groups. I think that is the reason why he That is the reason I.
Thank you very much, Hilary. I think it also stems from many of the things we've looked at, the too much freedom the parents gave him, the neglect that we see, the exposure or the accessibility to many of these drugs. And at the end of the day, he has all those things at his exposure. I think that is why it was also very easy for him to actually be taken up by the Chifesi group, which we see that they are a terrible group and a very disturbing group in community.
Yeah, but you also need to mention that peers are not always bad, because I know all of us around here know that peer groups can be good.
Yes.
If you have good intentions, you want to start a soccer team, you want to start a dancing club, you want to start a musical group, you want to start even an academic or discussion group, such peer groups are very good. But when you begin engaging in groups in which you don't understand the intention, then I want to appeal to all of you young people to really be mindful of what you're likely to encounter in there.
I was asking myself, could be the consequences of, seriously, like that Joe passed through. I really don't know about them.
You know, a few days back, before they told me about his scenario, he told me he wanted to drop out of school.
Sure.
And he did. He dropped out of school. I asked him why, and he's like, he's not feeling it anymore. So I think really this drug problem was a big problem.
Which class was he?
He was in S5.
Imagine dropping out of S5
When you're
when
almost...
the ambitions are really high, you've chosen a combination, you are targeting becoming this doctor, you want to become this pilot, and all of a sudden drugs are diverting you from fulfilling your dream.
I think that is also very important for the people viewing us here today, that if you think you're going to use drugs and stay in school with the rest of the people who are not doing what you're doing, that is wrong.
It is of course wrong, but
school
also
administration, yes, it is very unacceptable in a school environment. They will of course bounce you from school and at the end of the day, you are the people we shall see out in the community as uneducated and referred to as dropouts.
But even before the dropout really occurs, if you are the drug abuser in the school, then it is also certain that you are the routine offensive person. It is the same you who wakes up late, it is the same you who dodges classes, the same you who doesn't put on uniform properly. So young people here and those viewing us, please make sure you don't temper, because you begin small, but then it comes around with many other dangerous consequences.
Okay, so since it's not cool to take drugs, how can we prevent ourselves and even our other young people watching us and everyone from prevent ourselves from taking drugs?
I think we are going to look at that in our next session. Thank you very much for that question. We shall begin it from there.